I remember the way her laugh filled the room that night, soft but certain, like she'd finally decided to stop holding her breath. We'd known each other for months, exchanging coffee cups, shared umbrellas, and glances that lingered too long, but this was the first time it felt like neither of us was going anywhere. The rain outside tapped against the window, but inside her tiny apartment, the air was warm with candlelight and the smell of chamomile tea. She was sitting cross-legged on the couch, hair falling over her face as she smiled at me, and I thought, this is it. This is home. At some point, without any ceremony, she leaned closer and said, "Whatever happens, we don't let go." Agreed? Her eyes didn't blink. It wasn't a question you could answer halfway. I nodded. Agreed. That was when the siren wailed in the distance, sharp, rising and fading. She didn't flinch. Neither did I. It was just background noise, something for the city to worry about while we stayed wrapped in the kind of quiet you don't find twice in a lifetime. I didn't know then that promises made in candlelight could one day burn brighter than the truth. I met Arya on a Tuesday night in the cereal aisle. My chest was tight, my vision narrowing to a tunnel, and I was frozen somewhere between the Cheerios and cornflakes. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, until she stepped in front of me. "Hey," she said softly, like she'd known me for years. "Look at me." Her voice cut through the noise in my head. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just placed a hand over mine on the cart handle and told me to count her breaths. 3 in, 4 out. By the time I could stand steady again, she was smiling, not the kind you wear for strangers, but the kind you save for people you've already decided to care about. After that, she became part of my life the way music becomes part of silence. Slowly, then all at once. She worked the late shift at the cafe down the street, so every night I'd stop by for a coffee I didn't need, just to watch her write my name with a tiny heart in the foam. She left folded notes in my coat pockets, recorded lullabies on my phone when she knew I couldn't sleep. I named the little jade plant on my windowsill after her because, somehow, it thrived even in my dim apartment. But there was one thing I never understood. Around 9 or 10 at night, without fail, she'd disappear. Calls went unanswered, messages unread until morning. I told myself everyone has their private hours, their small corners of solitude. I never imagined hers would hold the kind of secrets that could make or break the promise we'd made. It was close to midnight when my phone buzzed. 3 short vibrations, the old code Rafi and I used when we were teenagers. Back then it meant, "Come get me." Tonight, it carried something heavier. His voice was shredded when I answered. "I just need a place to breathe. Don't ask, okay?" 15 minutes later, he staggered through my apartment door, one hand pressed against his ribs, blood seeping through his shirt. I froze, but before I could even move, Arya was there. She didn't gasp, didn't demand an explanation. She just guided him to the kitchen table, grabbed the first aid kit from under the sink, and went to work like she'd done this 100 times. The only sound was the hiss of antiseptic and Rafi's sharp breaths. I hovered uselessly, every question crowding my throat. But Arya never looked up. "Hold the light steady," she murmured, as if this were an everyday inconvenience. The sirens outside were faint at first, then swelling, bouncing off the brick buildings like a warning. My phone lit up with a breaking news alert. Armed robbery at West End Liquor. 1 dead. Suspect vehicle. Black sedan. Partial plate 7K3. I didn't need to see the rest. Rafi's black sedan was parked 2 streets over. My pulse roared in my ears. "Arya, the news." She glanced at me then, finally. Her eyes didn't waver. "He was yours before he was a suspect," she said quietly, wrapping the last strip of gauze. "Don't forget which one matters tonight." In that moment, I understood the danger of loving someone like her. She didn't just choose sides, she erased the line altogether. The knock came soft but deliberate. 3 slow raps that made the air in the apartment shift. Arya and I were still at the kitchen table. Rafi was gone, out the back door 30 minutes earlier, taking the rain with him. But the chair where he'd sat still carried the shape of his weight, the faintest rust-brown smear on the edge of the tablecloth. When I opened the door, 2 men stood there. Detectives. Not uniformed. Worse. One had a leather notebook, the other a gaze that felt like he'd already memorized the room behind me. "Sorry to bother you this late," the taller one said. "We're following up on a disturbance in the neighborhood. Mind if we ask a few questions?" Before I could nod or stumble over a greeting, Arya was beside me, leaning casually against the doorframe. They asked about a man, Middle Eastern, mid-30s, black sedan. They asked if we'd seen anyone matching that description tonight. I opened my mouth. Arya beat me to it. "We've been out since 8, she said, voice smooth enough to slide under the door. "Caught the late showing at the Crescent. Want the ticket stubs?" The detective scribbled something. The other one tilted his head. "Anyone here when you got home?" "No," she said, not blinking. "Just us." She didn't look at me, but I could feel her hand brushing mine, grounding me or warning me. A minute later, after a polite thank you, they were gone. I turned to her, words ready to spill, but she was already pulling out her phone. Her fingers danced across the landlord's shared security app. I watched the screen as she accessed the hallway camera feed, tapped twice, and the footage from the last 2 hours dissolved into nothing. When she finally looked up, there was a softness in her eyes that made my stomach twist. She stepped close enough that her whisper brushed my cheek. "We had one night," she said, as if it were a simple fact. "I wanted to keep it." And just like that, the first lie wasn't just told, it was etched into the walls around us. By morning, the apartment smelled faintly of bleach and drier heat. Arya was at the laundry sink, sleeves rolled, coaxing the last of the rust-colored stain from Rafi's shirt. She didn't flinch at the sight of it, just worked with the precision of someone who's done this before. When the fabric looked harmless again, she wrung it out, pressed it into a plastic bag, and slid it deep into the trash chute. The sound of it dropping away felt final. On the counter, the corner of a crumpled receipt peeked from under a coffee mug. She lifted it, read it once, gas station, timestamp that would land Rafi 2 blocks from the robbery, and fed it into the blue flame of the stove. The paper curled into black petals, vanished. "Come here," she said, not looking up. I stepped closer. "If they come back," she began, her voice low but deliberate. "You answer in 3 beats. Short, confident, consistent. You don't fill silences. You don't explain. And if you forget, you follow my lead." Her eyes held mine until I nodded. It was less instruction and more an oath. By afternoon, Rafi was back, pale and jittery, hands stuffed in the pockets of a hoodie that looked borrowed. He asked for cash, a ride out of the city. "No," Arya said flatly. His mouth opened, but she cut him off. "You have 48 hours. After that, you're not our problem." Her tone made even me want to leave. When he was gone, I found myself wandering the apartment just to feel my own skin again. That's when I saw it. Tucked behind a stack of folded blankets in the closet, a small steel lockbox. The kind you don't buy unless you expect trouble. I shouldn't have opened it. Inside Nita's library cards were old IDs in names I didn't recognize, a thick stack of cash wrapped in elastic, and a cheap black burner phone, powered off but still warm to the touch. For the first time since the night we met, I wondered if Arya had saved me, or if she'd simply claimed me. The table was set like a secret, 2 plates, 1 candle, wine breathing in a cheap glass decanter. Arya called it practice, but the way she lit the wick and dimmed the lights made it feel like a vow ceremony. "We just need to be in sync," she said, topping off my glass. "Every detail, same words, same timing. If we can do that, they can't touch us." So we rehearsed. Where we'd been, what movie we saw, what snack I'd bought her at the lobby kiosk. Each answer fitted together like the clasp of her hand over mine. Between the lies, she smiled, and I let myself believe it was for us, not for survival. Halfway through the bottle, a knock at the door broke the scene. Detective Casas again, tall, quiet, with eyes that seemed to remember everything you'd ever said. He stepped in without asking, glancing at the candle before looking back at me. "The victim," he began softly, "was a father. 2 kids, 12 and 8. It was a clean shot to the ribs. I saw Arya's jaw flex, but she didn't look away. We've had an anonymous tip about a safe house," Casas continued. "Belongs to a friend of yours, Rafi." Something flickered in her then, small, Quick, but I caught it. Tension, like a breath held too long. She said nothing, and eventually Casas left us with the echo of his footsteps down the hall. Later, while she showered, I went looking for an aspirin in the drawer beside her bed. Instead, I found a photograph buried under a stack of postcards. It was Aria, younger but unmistakable, her arm around Rafi. They were laughing. Her hair was longer, but the necklace was the same. The tiny silver feather she still wore, the one she'd told me was just a trinket. When she emerged, hair damp, I held it up without a word. Her eyes softened, not with guilt, but something like mercy. She took the photo, set it gently on the counter between us. "I knew him once," she said finally. "I chose you." And somehow, that was enough to keep me from asking the question that mattered most. What had she chosen me for? The knock wasn't police, just Mrs. Levin from down the hall, cradling her ever-present thermos of tea. She handed me a flash drive. "They asked if I had anything from that night," she said, eyes darting past me toward the kitchen where Aria stood rinsing dishes. "I told them my hallway cam's junk, but maybe this helps you too." The file was barely a minute long, grainy audio and a thin slice of our front door. Our voices were faint but clear enough, me laughing, Aria telling me to hold the bag while I find the keys. The timestamp didn't fit. 12 minutes later than the time we'd given Detective Casas. When I showed Aria, she didn't blink. "Then we fix it." She disappeared into the bedroom, reappearing with a movie ticket receipt. "See? It matches the audio now." She slid it across the counter like a playing card. It was too perfect, too easy. When she went to pour herself more coffee, I picked it up. Familiar texture, faint scent of our ink cartridges. The perforated edge was clean, but I knew the paper. We'd bought the pack together for printing resumes. "You printed this," I said quietly. She didn't deny it. Instead, she stepped closer, her voice low but steady. "Do you love me enough to be sure?" Her eyes searched mine, not for truth but for compliance. The distance between her question and my answer felt like a cliff edge. Somewhere in the apartment, the receipt lay between us like a loaded gun. Rafi's voice cracked over the phone, panicked and raw. "They're on me, I've got to move now." Before I could answer, Aria took the phone from my hand, calm as still water. "Stay here," she said. "I'll handle it." Her kiss was quick, deliberate, like punctuation. Then she was gone. Minutes later, a single gunshot split the night. My chest seized, but the sound of sirens veered away, heading somewhere else. When the knock came, it was Detective Casas. His eyes swept the room like he'd been here before. "We picked up your friend," he said evenly. "Alive." He held out his phone. A screenshot glowed between us. A text to an unlisted number, dropping Rafi's exact route and car description. The sender's number, Aria's burner. I felt the floor give under me. Casas didn't wait for me to finish. "Sometimes the tip that saves you comes from the last place you'd expect." He left it there, heavy and deliberate. When Aria returned, there was no rush in her step, no apology in her face. "It's over," she whispered, brushing her fingers across my jaw. "You sold him out." My voice was flat, foreign to my own ears. "I told the truth where it mattered," she said. "I kept you safe." Her words slid into me like a blade, warm, sharp, impossible to remove. I didn't know if I'd just witnessed the purest act of love, or my sentencing into something far darker. I loved her more after the lie, and I hate myself for that. There's something about someone risking everything for you, even the law, that makes you feel both invincible and owned. Detective Casas's voice still echoes when I try to sleep. In the end, the cleanest alibis are built with love. I wonder if he meant it as a warning, or an apology. She never stood before a judge. One morning she was just gone, like a scene cut mid-frame. In her place, tucked into the soil of the little plant I'd named after her, was a folded scrap of paper. "Grow where you're planted." The plant sits on my windowsill now. I water it. I watch it lean toward the light. I tell myself I'm keeping it alive for her, but maybe it's for me. I keep the plant, I keep the secret, and I keep the ache.